The views and opinions expressed in the following program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect those of KSMQ Public Service Media Incorporated or its assigns.
Welcome to Garden Connections. I'm your host, Stephanie Passingham. Gardeners know the power of seeds. They are small but mighty. On today's program, we'll be visiting with Laurie LeGrande and Jack Moe of River Valley Sprouts near Houston, Minnesota. We'll learn all about their operation and how you can grow sprouts at home. We'll also visit with Candy Marshall, who will demonstrate various seed starting techniques so you can get a jump start on your garden at home. And of course, we'll hear from Jennifer McCauley Oftelie, and she'll give us some tips on how to prepare your tools for the upcoming garden season. Stay tuned for Garden Connections. Laurie LeGrande and Jack Moe have been eating sprouts for 35 years, and they've been growing them for others since 1979. They have more than 5,200 square feet of space on their farm in southeastern Minnesota dedicated to alfalfa, bean, broccoli, and other sprout varieties. Laurie, Jack, of all the things you could grow, why did you choose sprouts?
Well, we started growing sprouts ourselves. We were traveling around the country and growing them in mason jars in our van.
In your van, okay.
And we were looking for a business to get into, and so we wanted to provide a product that we felt really good about, and that was sprouts.
And explain exactly what is a sprout.
Is the sprout, go ahead.
It's just a seed that's germinated and grown in water until it's, a certain little length.
Okay.
And they all take different lengths to grow. Generally alfalfa, 4 or 5 days. Some sprouts a little bit longer. Bean sprouts about 6 days.
Okay. And so this is before they formed any of those first true leaves? I mean, this is
yes.
very early.
It's the cotyledon leaves.
Okay, all right. And there are different kinds of sprouts that you grow. What are the various varieties you have?
We have mung bean, which is probably our biggest seller. And we have alfalfa and broccoli and some blends. And we also have organic sprouts, alfalfa and a salad blend.
Okay, and is there a difference in how you grow those?
The bean sprouts are grown in the dark with 70-degree heat and 70-degree water. And the alfalfa is grown in light.
Okay.
The bean sprouts definitely have to have warmer water temperatures too. That 70 degrees is very perfect for them, 70, 71 right in there. If it's cooler, they'll still grow, but it throws off their growth pattern, and it would take extra days. And so darkness is also important, because if they get light early on, the bean sprout will turn green, and you don't want that. You want it to,
So walk us through the process from day one. You have these seeds, and then what happens next?
The seeds come in, and we check them in, and then they have to be washed and sanitized. And from there, they go into their growing vessel, where they grow approximately 5 days, and after 48 hours, we take the irrigation water sample and take it into a lab in La Crosse and have it tested. Okay. And then they're harvested and washed in the wash tank, and then they're spun dry, and then they're packaged and refrigerated.
And away they go. That's a fairly tight timeline. 5 days is not very long.
Yeah, it's critical. The washing chills the product down a little bit, and then we spin dry the product so it's dry when it's in the bag, and that extends the shelf life.
Improves shelf life, I bet it would. So sprouts have this reputation for being nutritious. What's that all about? Can you tell us why that is?
Sure. They're packed with vitamins, vitamin A, vitamin K, vitamin C. They're low in calories, very low in fat. And then the broccoli sprouts have been proven in research done by Johns Hopkins University to have a compound called sulforaphane, which has actually been known to prevent some kinds of cancers.
Oh, wow. Okay. And talk about the different varieties that you grow, and you do some blends too.
Yes.
So what makes them different? Do they taste different? Describe
Sure.
those for us.
Well, the tangy is a clover and radish, and it tastes radishy.
Okay.
And
Spicy almost?
Spicy, yep. And then we have a garlic alfalfa, which tastes garlicky.
Oh, interesting.
And then the bean sprouts taste sweet and a little more water to them.
Is that the one that most people are more familiar with? Is that the popular one you see in Chinese cooking?
Sure.
Yeah,
Yes.
it is.
And then the alfalfa is basically what the sprout industry in the United States was started on, was the alfalfa.
Now you have a commercial operation here with controlled climate,
Yes.
humidity, temperature, light, all those things. For folks at home that may be interested in trying their hand at growing sprouts, what kind of helpful hints do you have for them? What kind of tools would they need to try sprouts at home?
Okay, bean sprouts, it would be difficult, but the other sprouts, if you just got your regular quart mason jar, put your sprouts in, soak them.
The seed, you only need
Or
like
the seed,
a
yeah.
tablespoon of
A
seed.
tablespoon of
is
seed.
all
That's
not
you
very
need.
much.
No.
No.
Okay.
Soak that in warm water for a few hours, drain them, put a screen. You can screw it on with your
Would
lid.
cheesecloth work?
Sure.
Okay.
Drain your water and kind of shake your jar and put it on its side
On its side. Okay.
in the dark.
In the dark.
Yeah, and rinse it twice a day is about all it needs.
And then after 5 days, 3, 4, 5 days, you can harvest them yourself when you see the length that you want.
And maybe put them out in the light for the last day so
For
they
the last
green
day.
out really nice.
Okay. Sounds good. Any pitfalls that people should try to avoid, or really are sprouts fairly easy to grow?
They kind of have a tendency, if you're not growing them,
If you forget about them.
and they kind of clump up and kind of get nasty in there, but
Okay, a little gooey maybe.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So keep them spread out. All right. Good tip.
Yes.
Okay. So what's your favorite thing about growing sprouts? Why do you love to do this? You can tell you guys have been at it for a long time.
We love to do it because, like I said earlier, we believe in our product. We believe it's a good, healthy, nutritious product. We have 4 kids that are now mostly adults, and that was one of their first foods. I grind up sprouts for baby food.
Okay.
And we believe in it. We eat them ourselves. We grow sprouts because we believe they're a really good food product.
Okay. Well, can we sample some?
Oh,
go
we
ahead.
can.
Go ahead,
I was
Jack.
just going to mention it's a green that you can have year round. In the wintertime, it's always a struggle
true.
to, a lot of people, have gardens, and that's great in the summertime, but
You've got to freeze and can everything to
Yeah,
hope to have something
exactly,
over the winter. This is a
exactly.
great
So-
live, fresh.
Yes.
Considered
year.
a vegetable?
Yes.
Okay. Well, let's sample some. Let's take a look.
Okay, here's some. This is the organic salad blend.
Okay, so this is salad blend, clover, alfalfa, and broccoli sprouts.
yes.
And
All
it's
right.
so good. The broccoli adds a nice little spicy. They're so good. I mean, isn't that tasty?
And they're crisp. They're crisp. They're great. What's the most popular blend that you guys sell?
I'd say the tangy,
The tangy. And
the clover and radish.
is it okay to combine those at home too? Do they have different
sure.
growing periods, or do you grow them separately and then blend them?
It's about the same, actually. The radish might be a little bit faster, but that's fine.
Okay, so folks at home could mix them up in the same jar.
Right.
Great. Well, thank you, Laurie, Jack, so much for sharing this interesting operation with us and showing us we can have great fresh greens in the middle of winter.
Yes.
All right. Well, stay tuned. Coming up next, we're going to hear from Jennifer McCauley Oftelie, who's going to give us a few helpful hints on what to do with our garden tools if they're a little rusty from last fall. Stay tuned.
If you're like me, at the end of the season, you put your tools in the wheelbarrow and roll them on into the shed. Now, you're facing the joys of starting out the fresh new season with crusty, rusty tools. But never fear, it's not too late. With a little TLC, your tools can be ready to go with just a little elbow grease. We're going to start by removing any leftover dirt or bits of plant material with some warm soapy water. Preferably, you're going to use a soap that's neutral in pH, so it won't leave any residues that you don't really want. If there's any rust present, you can grab some steel wool and just scrub it on out. Steel wool is really good to remove rust. It's really the best way to go. You really got to lean into it a bit. There. You're going to want to rinse and dry thoroughly. That does look a little bit better. After drying, take a look at the condition of your tools. You're going to want to tighten any screws or bolts that hold the handles on. And you're going to want to sand down any wooden handles or holds on the tool that could potentially cause splinters. And then you're going to want to take some attention to any edges that might need sharpening. Sometimes cleaning your tools helps you realize that perhaps it's time for a replacement. Oiling is the next step. You can use pretty much any kind of oil you want. I tend to use what's readily available, like vegetable oil from my kitchen. My husband, since he's already outside, likes to use mechanical oil. But keep in mind that whatever you put on your tools will end up in your soil. You take a dry, soft cloth. An old t-shirt works really well. Baby diapers work good. And you're going to rub the oil all over the surface of the blade, carefully of course, especially if they've just been sharpened. And you can extend that oil all over the wooden handles. And if you have a tool with a hinge, it's really important to oil the hinges as well. There, that looks nice. Now, your tools are ready to go for the new season ahead.
Thanks, Jen, for those helpful hints. We're going to now take those tools and get them dirty a little bit. We're going to talk all about seed starting, and our special guest is Candy Marshall, and she is a master gardener from Clear Lake, Iowa. Candy, thanks so much for being here.
Well, thank you. I'm glad to be here.
All right. Well, we're going to demonstrate a few techniques, but let's start by talking about which seeds work best for starting in advance, because some prefer to just be direct seeded and not disturbed, but others really appreciate that jump start. What would you recommend to start ahead?
Ones you want to start ahead would be like the tomatoes, eggplant, green peppers, some of your herbs, things that require a little bit warmer temperature but yet a longer growing time.
Let's take a look at some of our techniques, and let's start with your favorite.
Yes, I like to recycle, and I use blueberry containers from the previous year's blueberries. They're nice because they have a domed lid and they have openings for drainage. So the other part of that then is my vermiculite. This is a non-soil product, and it's mica is what it is.
It's
kind of
really quite light,
porous.
isn't it?
It's very porous, and seeds germinate very quickly and easily in this. So I just take my container and I get it about that full, and then I put it in some water and just let the water soak up, and it does that pretty quickly. And then you just bring it up out of there and shake it off so that you don't have water dripping all over the place.
Great.
Then you bring it, I'll bring that over there. I take my little garden tool, and I like to make little rows. I prefer making little rows to plant things in. So we'll just do that, and then.
Okay, and you're going to plant what in this
is
particular
going to
container?
be California Wonder Peppers.
Green peppers, okay.
Yes, green peppers, sweet green peppers. So we'll just take our little seeds here and plop them in the little row. And I plant them kind of thick, about, and if you're wondering how deep to plant them, I follow the directions on the package. It'll say 1/4 of an inch, so I'll plant them thickly and about 1/4 of an inch deep. And we'll just get those in there like that.
Okay.
And then after your seeds are in there, then you just take and cover them up. And you can see why I like to moisten, because it
Right, a little easier to work
it's
with.
easier to work with. Yeah. And then the last thing that I do then is just take a little of the dry vermiculite and sprinkle just a little bit on top, just to make sure that everybody is happily covered.
So covering the seeds is something that you highly recommend.
Yeah, some seeds do not require covering, but most garden seeds, vegetable seeds do.
Like that better, okay.
So then you just snap the little dome on and you take your little label. I take a black magic marker and I write right on the lid
Right
what
on the
it
lid,
is and the
okay.
date I plant it. Otherwise you can use a popsicle stick or whatever.
Okay,
So
and then
that's
you
how
put
I
it in
do
a
that
tray
one.
like this, that then you can fill with water and it will soak up through those bottom holes?
Actually, with these, I don't have to worry about watering again because I saturated this with water just
Okay.
now. So I'll fill this whole tray up with these that have been planted, and I'll put it on a grow mat.
Okay.
And it's already domed.
Right,
So
so get your lid on
that's
it.
all I need to do.
And that's all you need to do. Okay,
Just wait for them to grow.
sounds good. Let's try another method here. These things are, you used to see they used to always be plastic. And now
Yes.
you see a lot more that are made of biodegradable materials, even
is
the
great.
tray itself that holds the water. A similar concept, it just holds a great deal, many more, and it's got individual spots. So, using something like this, where do we start?
Here, I would take my medium, my seed starting medium that's been moistened, and I would go ahead and put it right directly in this. There we go.
Okay, we'll just practice with a few of those.
Yeah, and we'll just kind of put those in there. The next thing you would do here is just make a little hole there.
Just a little dent.
Just a little dent, yeah. You can use a toothpick for this, or you can use a pencil, or any sort of little, just something small.
Okay, and in this tray we're going to start.
And this is going to be the yellow pear cherry tomato. I just love these.
These are great.
So good.
Yes.
So
one of my
we'll just
favorites.
do a few little, and I like to put a couple of these in each one.
And these seeds are fairly tiny, aren't
Yes, they are.
Another really interesting tip that I was shown once by a gardener is to take a couple of toothpicks, or one for you, one for me, and to put a little dab of water on, this is just the lid, whoop,
Oh, very good.
of a Tupperware, and you dab your toothpick in the water, and then it picks that seed, see if I can have a steady hand, right up, and you can drop it right in that hole, and it lets go. I love
Isn't
that
that
idea.
clever? I like that idea too. So there we go. We'll just go ahead and do a couple of those.
And in a cell that has kind of bigger holes here, do you still just put one seed per cell, or are you going to put more than one?
I would put a couple at least, because you don't know how these are going to, some of them may grow, some of them may not grow, and so if you have a couple in each one, with the one that's the sturdiest, you can keep, and you can snip the other two off with your scissors. All right, so we'll just cover those up.
And then again, you cover that up. Okay.
There we go.
And in this particular tray, you're going to actually pour water into the bottom of it. I bet you could just pour it right there.
Right, you'd pour it into the
Pour the
bottom.
water into the bottom. And then these are going to soak up through the bottom.
Right,
All right.
and then you'll want to put, lay some plastic over it loosely to keep it, keep the humidity in.
Yep, it doesn't have to be a fancy preformed
No.
dome, just a little plastic will work.
If you have a dome, fine, but if you don't, you can just use plastic.
All right.
Or even a plastic bag,
Oh,
as
sure.
long as you don't close the bag.
Right.
And then you'll set this on a grow pad.
On a grow pad as well.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's talk about flat seeding. Just using a big open flat tray.
Okay. So,
Set that guy over there.
okay.
So again, you're going to start with just putting your mix in there. Is that right? Shall I do that for him?
Yes. We'll put the mix in there, and let's see, what were we going to plant in there?
There we
Oh
go.
yes, we're going to put marigolds. These are just annual marigolds.
So you'd fill that whole tray up like
You can
that.
fill the whole tray. And so we'll just make little rows. I kind of like to do little rows versus just broadcasting. Take our marigold seeds. There's a few in there. We'll just go ahead and put them in here and just make them rather thick.
Do you mark your rows when you do a flat like this?
You know, I don't.
You don't? Okay.
I did when I first started gardening, but now I just let them grow. All right, there we go.
Sounds good. All right. So soil blocking is making little blocks with an instrument like this. It's got a little plunger on it. And you would use these very smallest blocks for some of your tiniest things. You can start your tomatoes in these. I start my peppers in these. And you want a fairly moist soil. This is a little bit drier, but with these you want a fairly moist soil because you're going to pack this into this soil blocker. You kind of squish it in there. So wear your gloves because your hands will get dirty.
So it makes like a little brick.
It makes like a little brick. That's exactly right.
Okay.
Let's see if I got that in there tight enough. And then I use wooden trays, but you can just use any kind of tray. And then you put it down and then you push the plunger. And what you end up with then are these tiny little blocks with a little indent in them. And then of course I take my toothpick and I put one seed in each little block. They come in sections of 20, so it helps me keep track of what I'm doing. You talked a little bit about moving them up in size. I've got a little bit larger, a 2-inch soil blocker, but why don't you explain to folks about when your plants come out and when you should think about moving them up to give them a little more elbow room.
Right. When your plant that you've started gets its first set of true leaves, so the first leaves that come out are the cotyledons, and you have, those aren't the right seed, they're leaves. The second set then are the true leaves, and that's when you can take your little tool when they get about that high with their second set of true leaves and scoop down in, being careful not to disturb the roots. You'll have your dirt, you'll have a little hole here, and you scoop it out and you set the plant in, and you want to set it in a little deeper than what it was growing in here.
Okay.
And then you just set it in and you pack the soil around it, and again make sure that it's been watered.
Been watered. And you'd want to go from something this size to quite a bit bigger.
Yeah, for tomatoes especially, I would go to at least, what is this, 4 inches across, because the tomato plant has lots of rooting going on, and you don't want to disturb these roots when you transplant out into the garden.
Right.
So I like to have a nice big rooting area for the tomato. Very
All
good.
right. So you talked about warmth a little bit. You talked about a heating pad or a grow mat. Why is that important?
The growing takes place much quicker if the plant is kept warm, if the roots are kept warm. If it gets below 50, then this growing process is going to really be slowed down.
Okay. And how important is light at the very beginning?
When you first plant your seed, it's not all
Not
that
important at all. Okay.
No, I mean, you can put it in a brightly lit area, but it's not, essential that it has bright light. For one thing, it can heat up too hot underneath your plastic. And you already have it on a grow pad, on a heating pad, so it can get too hot in there and it can burn your seed, and then you won't get any germination at all.
At all. Okay. What other pitfalls are there? I mean, because starting seeds can be fairly easy, but there can be some challenges, damping off or other humidity issues. Tell us a little bit about those and how do we combat them?
Yeah, damping off is when you have your soil is too moist, you've watered it too much, and there's no circulation in your greenhouse. The plants are close together, and so they get a fungus, and it causes them to wilt and die. And there's really not much you can do except start over.
Start over.
So,
Okay.
yeah, so the key to that, I have found, is not to overwater. Resist that urge to overwater. Just, keep things so that, you can feel it's moist on top. If it's moist, don't water it. And then the fans. I have a couple fans in my greenhouse, and I just have those on all the time, and that it's kind of good because it keeps the stems sturdy to have that blowing across, and it keeps the air moving.
That's a great idea, because when you set them out, that first breeze is going to topple them if you haven't kind of strengthened them.
Right.
Great tip. Great tip. All right, Candy, thank you so much for joining us and sharing all these great ideas for seed starting in your home.
Well, thank you. I've really enjoyed this. It's been fun.
All right, great. Well, thank you so much for joining us on Garden Connections. We're looking forward to another exciting episode next week where we learn more about making your garden bloom. Thanks for joining us. I'm your host, Stephanie Passingham. On Garden Connections, we'd love to see photos of your garden. Or if you have questions for our garden experts, contact us by emailing garden@ksmq.org or like us on Facebook.